Yeah, good morning, everyone, to our today's ERCI webinar. It's on data assurance strategies and implications for railways. First, I will give you an introduction of ERCI as it is. My name is Lutz Hübner, coming from one of the 18 ERCI members, the Cluster Transport, Mobility and Logistics in Berlin and Brandenburg. And as you can see from this slide, we have in total 18 clusters which are members of ERCI. It is the European Railway Clusters Initiative founded in 2010 and being a legal entity based in Brussels since 2022. ERCI represents over 3,600 enterprises, including 2,300 SMEs, and they are also represent universities, R&D institutions, educational institutions, incubators, accelerators. ERCI is managed by nationally or regionally focused clusters. So, and the services are mainly for small, medium-sized enterprises in order to strengthen their visibility, to strengthen their market opportunities, not only in their own region, in their own country, but also in other regions and outside, and also not only within the EU, but also outside the EU. I will give you an example a bit later on that. Therefore, we have some activities that we supply as ERCI. We try to make matchmaking between companies on certain topics, like the topic of cybersecurity, which is also a topic of today's webinar. Then we have other task forces, multimodal logistics, green and sustainable mobility, human factors, and so on. Yeah, I guess that the webinar could be a good restarting point of the activities of the ERCI Task Force Cybersecurity, and maybe Narcus or Christine will say something about the upcoming activities within the next months. Yeah, not to forget the annual ERCI Innovation Awards. It's only 2 weeks left. Then we have the 10th edition of the ERCI Innovation Awarding Ceremony. It will take place this year during the InnoTrans. I will have a special slide on this later too, and then you can please note the date, and for sure you are warmly invited to take part. Yeah, our contact points as for ERCI, and we see us with yourself as ourselves as the European Railway Meta Cluster. We are for sure available during the World Wide Web, during social media platforms, and we have for sure also an email address which you might use to contact us. General information, when you have questions regarding these two interesting presentations we are facing within the next minutes, please use the chat function to raise your questions there, and then I will copy the questions into a special slide. And so we have, after each presentation, a short Q&A session. Now it's time for me to hand over to, not to the first speaker, but to the introduction of the first speaker, and it will be done by my colleague Christine Lorenz-Knoll. She is one of the cluster managers of ERCI, and especially from the Saxony Railway Cluster Rail S. Christine.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to introduce you today to our member company, SmartTECS Cyber Security. And SmartTECS Cyber Security will represent by Marco Winkler. Marco Winkler is the co-founder of the company, and he has 10 years of experience in offensive IT security. And the company's mission is to improve the security of the railway industry and infrastructure by providing high quality consulting and verification services. And yeah, now, Marco, it's your floor. But beforehand, you start, I will again remind you, if you have any questions to Marco, please just use the chat function. And afterwards, we will read all your questions. And now, Marco, it's your floor.
Great question. Thank you very much. I will try to share my screen.
We can see it.
Oh.
Okay. No, sorry.
And hopefully now you can see my screen.
No.
This is very weird. Sorry. Yeah, hopefully you can see my presentation. And from my side, good morning and a welcome to from me to all of you who have joined this webinar, and thank you to WS to get the opportunity to speak to you. Yes, today I would like to mention that the threat of cyber attacks is growing every day, and the rail sector is not immune to these threats, and the news of attacks on critical infrastructure is on rise. So in my talk today, I would like to give you an insight to this to its existing standards and frameworks, namely the ERCI 62443 and the technical specification 5071, which can help you to secure your products and also meet regularity and customer requirements. Before we start, I would like to do some words about myself. So, as we already heard, I'm the co-founder and CEO of the SmartTECS Cyber Security, and yes, I have studied applied IT security in Germany at Bochum, the Ruhr University. And yes, I'm a technical person. I love to hack things and break things, and I have several experience in network security, penetration test, and also in hardware security. I started my career in the professional security in 2010, and also earn some special certifications such as a professional penetration tester and license penetration tester. To give you a brief introduction to our group for those who are not yet familiar with us and SmartTECS. SmartTECS Cyber Security is a company who is specialized in IT and OT security. And is also part of the SmartTECS group, and this is an umbrella for different specialized companies, not only in the IT sector or OT security sector, and also in the automation, mainly in the railway technology. So in our group we have three types of specialists, which are in the modernization of railways and also in the new development, and yes, and finally in the IT and OT security. Yes, as I mentioned in the introduction, we are not able to open the newspaper without being informed of another security attack. However, over the last years, the attacks have been taken on a new quality, and no longer the attacks attacker is no longer taken into account to potential damage of individuals or organizations. As you can see here, in the last years, we have several attacks against the railway companies and also the infrastructure, which affects the availability of the sector. Some of them are critical, yes, and other are more as a joke, or can be classified as a joke, as you can see in the bottom right corner. So in Germany, there's someone who order a drink using the Western information system, and it's in German. You would like to order a beer. Yes, yeah, to make it clear, what are the threats in the last years. So the German institution, the Bundesamt für Sicherheit und Informationstechnik, also releases papers about threats for industrial components and what are the top 10 threats affecting industrial systems. As I mentioned here in this table. And yes, there are some threats that are already known, like denial of service attacks and also social engineering and phishing attacks. But I would like to highlight two increasing threats in 2022 and may also in the next years, that internet or that control components are connecting to the internet and have also a remote maintained access and are also then bounded to the internet, which potentially is an impact of this, that an external attacker can access internal applications. You can see the problem description about these highlighted threats and also some potential or possible threat scenarios. So they are highlighted, for example, direct access to the commons is publicly available, and also standard passwords can be used to perform authorized operations or access the components and affects internal components. Yes, keep this in mind. So we have in the end of the talk in short demo section where we can prove that these threats are real. Okay. So we have different challenges. They are particular in the railway sector. So first problem is about the access to the targets. So in the railway sector, an attacker can easily gain access to the assets. For example, for the rolling stock or the infrastructure. The targets are 24/7 available, and there are more connectivity to this based on the digitalization connectivity. The attacker can access to the assets, and it's also a moving target. So an attacker can enter a train and also leave to enter another train. And the second one is that information about attacks are public available. In my time, if I begin in the security sector, it was really hard to get information about specific attacks, complex attacks, and you need to research for specific complex vulnerabilities. But nowadays, there are a lot of information available, and this makes it easier for young hackers to potentially attack other infrastructure. And also, based on the public interest, the infrastructure information about the railway sector is also available on the internet. which helps to potentially prepare specific attacks. As I already mentioned, the digitalization doesn't stop for railway. So yeah, the customer has needs to connect any devices to assets of the rail, and they are no longer isolated as before. So an operator is interested to get some information, where's my train, what how fast it is, and get some telemetric metadata. Yes, at the end, we have many computers on wheels. So there are maybe more than 100 IT assets on a train, and yes, we have also the challenge that it's a complex system with a lot of stakeholders, which makes it very, very hard to secure. The last one is challenges about the regulations. So we have different stakeholders. We can see it here. We have regulations from the EU, which the most famous one is the EU directive which has been transported into national law. And yeah, this affects now various sectors such as the energy, finance, but also the transport sector. In Germany, we have also the railways classified as critics for critical infrastructure, and therefore they are affected by different laws from the BSI. And all these requirements goes to the operator, and then this requirements goes also to the supplier. So in this case, we have relevant standards who faces these requirements and regulations. Okay, and my last personal things that one challenge in the railway is that we need a good security culture. As you can see in the left-hand side, there will be no money or budget for security if we not have regulatories, and or there's maybe an incident which are related to cybersecurity. After that, there are a budget available. But it's better if we implement security before any incident happens. Okay. Then yeah, we can start with the standard 62449, which defines. We will start with the rules that are defined in this standard. So this standard divides the security topics by different stakeholders. So you have first the asset owner who defines and maintains the applicable result security risk for the entire system under consideration, and these requirements serve as a critical input for all activities involved in the system's life cycle, and will pass to the other roles, the system integrator and product supplier. So yeah, in many cases, this asset owner, which could be an operator, rail network operator, rail operator, and yes, this operator organization is responsible for the operating of the system, and they ensure that the system smooth functioning and adhere the is responsible to attend the security standards. The system integrator is the second role, develops and validates these security protection schemes tailored to match the acceptable security risk, and which are defined by the asset owner. Yes, they focus both on technical measures for the solution or the system, and yeah, guidelines the organizational measures during the operation and maintains. The last role, the product supplier. Yeah, here's the role the standard offers to simply way for the product and supplier. The standard offers in simply way to describes the security feature, functionalities, and capabilities for the product, and it's also an easy way for potential customers and system integrators to compare the products from different suppliers. So these rules, ensure that the implement security measures adhere to define standards and requirements. They validate the effectiveness of the security measures and identify gaps or vulnerabilities that requires solutions. Yes, you can see here that let's take a closer look to the standard. As we can see here, it's a multi-part standard which is divided into 4 parts. The first is the general one, then the policy and requirements in the second column, and the system and the component parts. Yes, the general part give us concepts and models to implement this standard, and the policies and procedure standards provides guidance on creating and maintaining a secure system, which including security policies and as well risk management, which was forced by some regulations. The system standard provides guidance on designing and implementing secure system, and including the security technologies and mitigation methods. And finally, the component standards describes the development life cycle requirements and the technical functionality level for the industrial components or in general components. Yes, each part is denoted by a suffix starting with -1 to -4. Yes, this standard helps the asset owner to secure the entire the network and to give requirements to the system and to the components. Today, I would focus on the requirements from policies and procedures, and on the system requirement and system level, and also for the system and component level. Okay, then in basic, important topic in the standard is the security level, which the security are based for this whole concept of requirements. In requirement, for instance, is the corrective process for a specific security weakness. So here you can see we have basically 4 different security levels, and this indicates the resistance against different classes of attackers. Yes, as you can see, the higher the security level, the greater is the range of the applied protection. In the SL1 indicates that the device or component is resistant to essential misuse, and the second security level 2 introduced additional security features and address attackers with low motivation and skills, and it's typically it's an advantage attacker, also called script kiddie. Yes, the level 3 assumes that the attacker has an advanced knowledge of the industrial system or the entire infrastructure, for example, for devices and protocols, and has an intention to, on the motivation to hack the system. Yes, and level 4 is then for national states attacks. And the device are classified that he can resist a national state attack. Yes, note that the security levels are the functional mental part of the 62443. Yes, and will be referenced in other technical specifications. Yes, we have 3 different categories of requirements are defined in the different parts of the standards. We have foundational requirements, the system part, the system requirements, and in the last and the third, the components requirements. I need to speed up my for the foundational requirements, we have 7 foundational requirements, and these are the top and are the baseline for the security capabilities of the system and the components. For example, in the first FR1, the requirement is that the identification and would implement identification and authentication control. Second one is the use of control that you enforce to assign privileges for an authenticated user. And the last one for this here, the system integrity, for example, ensures the integrity and the protection against authorized manipulation of data. So these foundational requirements protect most of the important security goals, which is the confidentiality, integrity, and as well the availability. To make it now more complex for each foundation requirement, there contains a set of derived system and component requirements that cover this specific security function and required to achieve the functionality requirement, resulting here in this hierarchy of requirements. So as you can see, we have the here the identification and authentication control, which have system requirement and component requirement, and to achieve the security level number 1, you need to implement a human use identification and authentication process. And yes, you can improve this this requirement to get a higher security level, and at the end you have a requirement number 3, which forces the multi-factor authentication for all networks. And yes, this could be a mess. So there are a lot of requirements for each and every IT asset or OT asset to implement. Okay. So yeah, what requirements or capabilities are needed is shown here. The table simply shows that if you have implement more security capabilities, you can achieve a higher level of the security level, protect against the certificated attacks or an attacker who has knowledge about your system or inside attacks. Okay. There are one important thing about types of security levels in the standard. So these levels are divided into 3 parts. We have a target security level, capability security level, and archived security level. So what this means, the target security level is typically determined as a result of a risk assessment by the asset owner and considers the likelihood and consequence of a security breach of a specific asset or zone. You can in the risk assessment define different zones. This describe different security levels. However, the capability security level is applied to a component and indicates the security level of the component, which is supports without countermeasures when it's properly configured. It's important to note that will be a case where the system integrator needs to deploy a component that has not or cannot achieve the required security level. To meet these requirements, the supplier can specify that its component can archive this security level when he is in conjunction with another device that supports this required security feature, which is then also known as compensating control or countermeasure. And yes, and this countermeasure but must be described in the original documentation. And this finally results in the archived security level. So it's a measure of the actual security level of the system. Which means the capability security level is together with the countermeasure results in the archived security level. Okay. Then now we have a good overview about the security levels and different types of security levels. However, the standard has one problem for the railway sector, so they does not fit for the specific requirements on the rail. So that's the reason there was a raise of the technical specification 5071 with is not event to renew, so uses specific or cherry picks different goods standards or types of the standard and implemented to another framework, security framework, which handling the security in the way for the security sector, railway sector. So they, for example, uses the 26443, the security levels, the risk assessment, and also that I present a list of requirements and put it together with the life cycle described in the 5126. It's also adapts this to railways and includes different railway asset models, the architecture model, and also zones. They makes also good notes for railway in the security requirements. I will show you this. And yes, have a section about in detailed risk assessment in railway, and also defines security design principles. Because the secure life cycle, which are defined in the section 4 or part 4 of the 62443 cannot apply on the railway. So as you can see here, the technical specification have different synchronization points and deliverables in this V-cycle software development process, and I have picked 2 from the standards. So we have, for example, in the phase 2 of the system definition and operational context, the stakeholders of the assets needs to provide different system definition documentations, for example, the system boundaries and an initial system architecture. Then we have in the third column the responding cybersecurity activities from a cybersecurity team, which will review network plans and also implement or conduct a risk assessment, and finally take over these resulting documents and documentation to the stakeholders. Or, for example, in the phase 10, the system acceptance, there are required activities that, there's a security handover to the system integrator and the rail operator, for different cybersecurity cases and also updated security guidelines. Yes, as I mentioned, we have introduced the system requirement for the foundational level 1, the identification and authentication control. And here you can see it in the technical specification. There are optional notes for the railway sector and define the relevant design principles, stakeholders, and also the type of this. Okay. Now I would like in the last section, I would like to show you what are potential consequences of a system and component which is not properly hardened. And for this demo, I chose this little friend. It's a Vago PFC 200 controller, which was part of our security assessments for an electric charging station. And yes, this is a small device that supports different industrial protocols like CAN open, Modbus, and also Ethernet. And yes, of course, the product follows high security standards and offers also a remote access interface and has an integrated web interface. Yes, before we start engagement, so we need to look at the manual, as these types of documents give us a lot of insight about the product itself, and in this case, the vendor chooses to use default password for highly privileged admin user and also default accounts. Yes, to search for such devices, so we have no twin in front of me, so we use the internet, and yes, to search for such devices, we can use the Shodan platform, yes, which is a search engine that scans the public internet and allows us, or me as user, to search for various types of components, servers that are connected, yes, to the internet. To summarize, we have the digitalization is processing, and yes, the cybersecurity will be one of the most challenging parts for us, and especially for the rail sector in the next few years. But as already shown in this presentation, we have good standards, and they will provide us to establish a robust and security and resilient operation for critical rolling stock and rail infrastructure. And now I will thank you for your thank you all for you, and give up to Lutz. Thank you.
Or to me. Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry.
But sorry, don't worry, Marco. Okay, then thank you very much for your speech and for giving us the insights about the topic cybersecurity in railways. And before I read the question from the chat here, again, if you have any question, then use the chat now, also for Mr. Winkler. And the question which come from Mr. Mertens is, do we have any information on the confirmed number of cyber attacks during, for example, the last 5 years in the railway sector in Germany or EU or international? So are there any numbers about cyber attacks?
Mhm. Yes, I'm not, or I'm not familiar with the numbers or if there are numbers, but we have regulations, especially in Germany, that if there are some problems with the data privacy or yeah, if it affects any personal data, then you need to inform the authorities that there are cyber attacks. And yes, this may be the confirmed number. So I just the numbers are available. Yes, but I'm not familiar with the current numbers.
Okay, then thank you very much. Okay, then if there are no questions, I will hand over.
No. There
No?
are
Oh, sorry.
some other questions. Can you see the shared screen, Christine?
Yeah, we can.
There must be a slide with the questions, and there is a long question, and we have also the pre-prepared question, and there will be one additional question I will just copy and paste into the next slide.
Okay. So then the first question is TS 50701 a mandatory standard for rail companies to adopt?
Yes, the 5071 is a technical specification, and it's not mandatory for railway companies. But as mentioned, we have an EU directive to the NIS2, and yes, this states that the companies need to be state of the art in cybersecurity, and this enforces either you need to implement the 70001 standard or the standard for the 6255, and but the TS give you a good introduction and a good framework to implement these for railway.
Okay, so the second question I've already asked. So the third one. So it was highlighted that availability of public information increases the likelihood of potential attacks. With modern train control systems typically following either standardized ERTMS protocols or implementing proprietary systems in CBTC type systems, have clear trends been identified in the type, frequency and impact of attempts or attacks on standardized compared to proprietary control systems? That's really a long question.
Yes. Yes, thank you for this question. Yes, this question highlights on one hand that yes, that public information are available, and that's yeah, also increases, of course, the likelihood so attackers can be prepared to attack such proprietary systems and protocols. I have no numbers or clear trends for this, so I cannot answer this question. But yes, if I'm an attacker and I would like to attack these protocols, then I would like to first inform about this types and protocols, and yes, there is the likelihood increases that there's an impact using this proprietary protocols.
What is the strategy for legacy systems that hard to replace, renew?
Yes, the TS 5071 faces this strategy for legacy systems, but I need to review the technical specification for that. But they are mentioned definitely in the specification.
Okay, so then thank you very much to you, Marco, again. And of course, SmartTECS is also on the InnoTrans on our German booth. And now I hand over to the second speaker.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So our next speaker is Dr. Siraj Sheikh. He's a professor in systems security at Swansea University in the UK. He's also currently an independent scientific advisor at the Alan Turing Institute as a part of the Bridge AI initiative. He has over 20 years of experience in cyber physical systems security. So please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box as before, and we're going to start now. Siraj, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nargis. I hope you can hear me fine.
Yes.
Just making sure that systems are great. Thanks, Liz, as well. And Marco, thank you for a great presentation. I'm just going to try to share my screen, see if that works. Okay, so hopefully you can see me.
Yes, thank you.
Great. So just so you know, I can't see you now. So any pointers, Nargis, if you can just flag it up in case I interrupt or something. Well, thank you for that introduction. So yes, I'm Siraj Sheikh. I'm a professor in system security, and just to put it in a bit of a context, I think Marco did a very good job to dive deeply into some of the requirements and the standards, and that the challenges are emerging. But he did mention at some point the costs for implementing some of the controls and budgetary kind of restrictions and so on. So just following up on that point, this presentation represents a little bit of work that we've done on the economics of security, and the notion of economics of security, just to give a brief intro, is understanding how we can study security, cybersecurity, but also cyber physical security. So there are aspects of this infrastructure that are cyber and physical in nature and that are connected and integrated. How do we study this phenomena from an economic framework perspective, where we understand that security is an economics problem as well? And how do we then, once we've understood it, how do we then use various levers, understand where the complexities are, the confusions or complexities are, which we can address and clarify to help make a business case for security, but also then incentivize and drive security from a economic, but also from a financial perspective as well, to achieve the right kind of objective. And so this work, obviously, I'll introduce the work, but also we'll then touch on railways, because we did a workshop earlier in the year in the UK where we spoke to stakeholders in the railways, and we just wanted to approach that subject from that lens. It's a very early stage work, so you know, we're still ongoing, so very open to bringing in further conversations into this course as well, and so on. So just to let me see if I can bring my slides here. So just before I introduce the work, I just want to introduce our group, System Security Group, and also the team members. I want to acknowledge them who work with me, and I would not be able to deliver on my work without their support, of course. As a research group, we are interested in research, but also in aspects of commercial testing, prototyping, and engineering secure and resilient kind of systems, where particularly we're looking at systems that are safety critical, that are increasingly autonomous, increasingly connected. And our mission is to approach things from a systems perspective. So yes, we delve into certain technology areas, into certain verticals, but because we work very, very closely with industry, and because we work at a systems level, very often issues of supply chains, issues of economics, issues of commercial reality and insight into delivering real world on the ground systems is something of a challenge. Also, just to mention, I am also a College of Experts at the Department for Transport, in the UK, and I also work with SEMI Europe, which is based out of Berlin, but working in Munich, working with colleagues in the automotive kind of advisory council of SEMI, looking at trusted electronics, which has some bearing, of course, in wider transport systems such as there as well. So, this work is part of, I just want to acknowledge the fellowship work. So this work is part of a fellowship that I am currently just concluding, working with Imperial College. And so, I'll come to the aims in a minute, and so on. And let me then go back to a slide or so. So the fellowship wanted to study, as I mentioned earlier, the economics of security, but we particularly wanted to focus on economics of critical national infrastructure, and protection and security of CNI. And that is a slightly different kind of or slightly more sharp focus on infrastructure such as rail, where there are CNI elements, but also acknowledging the fact that these infrastructures and these kind of systems are more prone to different economic levers. And so there are two frameworks in terms of economics. One is to study this. One is a macroeconomic framework, which attempts to study the system level, high level incentives and government policy and kind of key understanding of government measures in terms of risks and incidents and disruptions, and incentivizing this from a legislative perspective. And this is purely an economics perspective, really, to understand CNI security. And also this takes a system level view of economics, in the sense that it takes an ecosystem view, in the sense that looking at any incentives in terms of tax breaks or subsidies or protection from foreign competition, or protection of certain capabilities or IP and so on, that is something that is also in scope here. The other thing, of course, is a microeconomic framework, which is much more kind of behavioral economics. And this is behavior of individuals, but also, in a sense, in this context, the market behavior, where the impact of digital physical lock-ins across the supply chains, across procurement frameworks, but also various decisions more horizontally, and the externalities of those decisions, the impact of that on other adoption of technology and so on. As I mentioned, the vendor-customer relationship, that is something that is studied. And over here, of course, that return on investment in terms of security awareness and improving security behaviors is important, but also then understanding where organizations could perhaps align and optimize their behavior as such, and so on. So this is something important, because in our discussions, which I'll present in a minute, we've tried to study across these, and focusing particularly on CNI, and there isn't much of a literature. So this is still a very early stage. Now, in terms of CNI, going back to CNI and what the definition is, and here's one definition that we've used in the UK very often in a lot of policy documents, but very happy to take any comments in the chat, of course, as to how you see CNI. And there are a couple of aspects of it. This is why it's important. So I think the commonly understood notion of certain critical elements of infrastructure is understood, where criticality is both in terms of the nature of the infrastructure, in terms of size and scale, and the function that it supports, and so on, but also that the loss or compromise of that infrastructure would have a detrimental impact on society or essential services that we consider in a developed economy. So CNI, in that sense, is then scoped out to a number of infrastructure types in terms of supply pipelines, transport infrastructure, water supply, for example. These are just examples. But also, we acknowledge now that in the UK and in some other developed countries as well, a lot of CNI, not all, but a lot of it is in the hands of private enterprises. And these operate as for-profit organizations, reporting to their shareholders, but also they're heavily regulated, but having the independence financially, economically, to make decisions of investment, to make decisions of due diligence around corporate risks and around delivery targets and around profit, essentially. And they also, therefore, also, they make decisions about technology and technology of security, for example. So the supplier and the supply chain and the choice of supply chain. And yes, it is very regulated, but in many of these sectors, security regulation is still new. There's still a lot of room for interpretation, and the supply chains and those dependencies are quite global in terms of a number of kind of system integrators and supply component manufacturers and suppliers are still global organizations, global in the sense that they are based out of the jurisdiction of the UK. So in a sense, there is sometimes a conflict between a commercial imperative and national security as we understand it from the perspective of CNI. And this is very important because this affects potentially railway as well, where, certainly in the UK, we have a situation where a lot of rail stock providers are not British, they may be Japanese or French and so on. And of course, parts of the railways are nationalized, but many parts of it aren't. And that commercial imperative for organizations to prioritize profit, in a sense, may not necessarily be aligned with certain security objectives. So we focus on security here, but that is the ultimate tension that I think we need to understand. And we need to understand this from a CNI perspective. Over here, it is mentioned in the telecommunications context, which is equally true. But of course, our focus today is rail. So essentially, there's been a number of themes that have emerged during my study, and so I just want to share them with you, and then we can open up to a discussion. Essentially, so one of the first themes that emerges, and this is all about trying to understand how do we incentivize these organizations, these CNI operators, to invest in cybersecurity. And in a sense, the one question that has emerged is whether investing in cybersecurity gives them a social license to operate. So the notion of social license in economics is essentially the public acceptability and the public's acceptance and acknowledgement in terms of reputational enhancement and gain, in terms of any resistance for acceptance and adoption, and so on, or for organizations to operate in a certain sector. And this is important where there is increasing consumer awareness and increasing consumer protection. And this is very true in rail, for example, where rail users are very mindful of the disruptions and of the delays that train operators suffer from in their delivery and performance. So similarly, for security, it is important to understand whether there are certain advantages to these operators if they are seen to be investing in cybersecurity. So this is an important question which I think increasingly now is being tackled in a number of other sectors. But for rail, perhaps this is still new. But this is an important question as such. And the idea of a social license is something that is gaining more and more understanding, particularly for investors, because investors are mindful of higher potential returns where markets offer less resistance and have more acceptance of organizations. The other theme here that we've come up, and this is a reasonably well understood theme compared to the first one, is this idea of moral hazards, which is where across supply chains, and I mentioned the global supply chain nature of many of our engineering endeavors these days, across these supply chains, what incentive there is for suppliers to comply, but also to be diligent and rigorous with regards to various kind of security requirements and various support mechanisms and processes as such. Beyond just standards, and I hope we agree that standards are quite loosely defined in many instances as well, so there are different interpretations. There is this classical economics kind of a view that that risk sharing has to be achieved across the supply chain. So any risk of failure is something that affects, or any failure is something that affects entities across the supply chain. And so once again, effective regulation could help, but that will take a lot of regulation. But also the question is, how do we make sure that the information asymmetries, the deep knowledge of security as such, due to the design of components and systems, is not something that is so protected and opaque across the supply chain that we do not really understand, how good our suppliers are to us, and whether there are any moral hazards, as it were, where essentially we get delivered malfunctioning systems or poorly designed systems, and so on. So this is something that is a challenge, particularly in complicated supply chains, and I think this is something reasonably well understood as such as well, and so on. So a third theme, which is worthy of studying here in the context of CNI, but also in the context of certain major industries, where of course the idea here is that certain industries are so important in a geopolitical way that for certain countries at a national level, coming together and forming alliances is one way of protecting them in some geopolitical context. So this idea of collective economics emerges. And these collective economics is essentially a very fundamental idea, a very traditional primitive idea, where people come together and essentially by the power of the community and the collective, they're able to exercise certain influence on the market, on the pricing, for example, and or certain other features of their supplier and so on. So one good example of this, and this is a link that I give, but I'm happy to, of course, kind of explain here, is this idea of Quad. A Quad is a geopolitical alliance between the US, Australia, Japan, and India. And these four countries, which are unnatural allies in terms of the geography, but they have between them a volume market. They have between them a supply of talent and also investment being done in certain sectors, for example, in semiconductors, which is one area of interest for them. and there are certain other areas similarly with a similar focus. And the idea of the Quad, these 4 countries, is that between them, they can establish internal alliances so that the industries are protected and they are able to have a certain influence and access. So for example, this is semiconductors are quite unique because, of course, they need access to certain minerals as well as talent, as well as a lot of investment, and as well as certain other kind of advantages and traits. So that's one example of how they're doing it, and this is something that in sectors such as rail as well, that is something to consider. And one final theme, and then I'll move over to my very final theme, of course. There is this idea of innovation rents, where for any innovation to be encouraged in any sector, we want to understand what the innovation rent is what heightened returns do investors get. And this is important if we are to have a vibrant innovation system as such and so on. Once again, incentivizing from an economics perspective. One final point about, one final theme, and then I'll switch over to rail, and then I'll conclude. In the UK recently, we've had the National Security and Investments Act. This is a very recent act, which essentially scrutinizes and intervenes actively in business transactions, particularly mergers and acquisitions in certain areas. And the UK obviously promotes free enterprise, but there are certain restrictions. So we already have a competitions and markets authority which looks at monopolies and mergers and acquisitions that may have detrimental impact to the economy. But NSIA is sitting in parallel, focused particularly on national security investments, where certain assets, as you can see, land, tangible assets, either ideas, IP, and so on, and that could include a number of asset classes that are there on the bottom left. If they are inviting certain investment or being acquired or taken over by other corporates in a global context, then NSIA could intervene. And so I'll give you examples of how they've done that. So there are 17 areas of economy in the UK where NSIA has identified that there could be national security risks that may emerge. And some of them, and it mentions transport very widely. It mentions communications, computing hardware, and you will see a number of other relevant technologies that are relevant to rail as well. So what is interesting is we've seen the data from 2022, where NSIA has intervened 14 times, and they have actually blocked certain transactions, and they have cleared certain other transactions, but sometimes they're cleared with certain remedies. And these are a number of sectors here where they've actually intervened. And so what is interesting, and why is it relevant here, is that some of the remedies, some of the clearances they've offered are conditional upon organizations implementing effective cybersecurity measures for the investment to go through or the acquisition to go through. And so I've given 3 examples here where in 3 different organizations, the NSIA Act was subject to assurances that there are controls and effective security mechanisms in place to prevent any unauthorized access of information from those companies to the parent company that is acquiring. So that could be a company in the US, for example, or a company, in China as well. So they're sensitive to where the acquisition is happening, but there are lots of acquisitions that are happening by Chinese, by other parts of the world, as long as they are, done in that kind of context. So this is important because this means very clearly organizations need to take cybersecurity seriously if they are to raise corporate finance an investment from channels that are outside of the UK, but even inside of the UK, NSIA could intervene, and so they have to be conscious as to how they manage that. Okay, so these are some of the themes that we've spoken about. I'm very happy to take questions on that, of course. But very finally, how does this very firmly relate to railways? So I'll explain the picture in a minute, but basically, very quickly, the CNI security angle in railways is something that is increasingly of interest. And we commissioned a workshop earlier in the year where we brought together a few stakeholders, colleagues from Nargis's institution as well, and a few other commercial organizations. And we wanted to understand what are some of the key issues in railways. And we realized that we're still very early. There's a full picture of this picture that is available that I'm happy to share, of course. But this is a nice summary that we had a visual illustrator who could summarize it. But of course, I'll break down into 4 key themes that I've taken from this slide. So the first insight was that it is a complex picture. There is cyber physical systems security itself. There's also information security. There's also safety and maintenance. And coming together, there is a complex picture where there are different stakeholders and they overlap with regards to these functions. And the question really is then, what is the right balance there? So that complexity of that picture is something that is a given. And this is applicable to many of the sectors as well, not just railways. Safety is very often considered an area which is sitting in alignment with security, although it is serving a different purpose. But there are also inherent tensions, and partly there are cultural reasons, because safety has been there for a very long time. Security is very new, relatively new, but also they have to work together for certain aspects. But how do we make sure that we communicate that these are different activities with very different profiles? So, for example, cybersecurity is very much subject to the evolution of the threat actor and the threat landscape. Something may be secure today, but may not be secure tomorrow at all, depending on the nature of vulnerabilities that may emerge. Safety perhaps could be considered at a functional safety level, at least, that is signed off for a static architecture. And of course, there are operational safety elements as well, which obviously are relevant here as well. But they're hard, but they are doable. It is doable, and that is something that the workshop suggested that we consider for railways, of course. And then the question, of course, is how do we figure out the risk? And this is where this is important, because some of this could be proactive security, some of this could be reactive. Where do we start? And then how do we make sure, therefore, we attribute the right, correct budget? And also, I would just add to that is there is the railway stock, the infrastructure, but then there is also the operators. And so those budgets could be across different elements of the ecosystem. And who picks up the bill for various aspects of that risk, and how do we figure out that risk, essentially, is something to consider. Of course, there are risk assessment methods, but then the question is, how do we regulate and how do we align liability with the right stakeholder who could then address the risk most effectively? So this is a key question, of course. And then finally, this is my final point, which is essentially that who benefits from this? So yes, there are different risk types. There are reputational risks, of course, and businesses do care about that. We can regulate a lot of this. We can penalize, and of course, we have cyber resilience acts and other elements, and so on. But the question really here is that how do we incentivize organizations to invest more? And how do we then do that to show who's benefiting more? So then that investment could be channeled accordingly but also then the burden of kind of security as such is aligned with organizations that are most stand to either benefit from that investment or effective security. So that is something else to consider, and it's a supply chain kind of a question, but also a liability question as well. There were more insights, but I think these are some fundamental questions from an economics perspective, which I just wanted to start with. I'll be very happy to follow up, of course, with colleagues for any follow-up questions, either through email or through a chat or through any domain, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siraj. Very interesting and insightful. We have some questions now. Let's start with the first question. Beyond technical security, why do we need concepts in economics for effective security, and particularly in CNI security?
Okay. So yeah, so that's a very fundamental question, which is important, which is that essentially what we have found over the years is even when we have good, effective technical measures available, the adoption of those measures is subject to an economic incentive or some other corporate or business kind of incentive, or even for consumers, mass consumers, there is some incentive for them to adopt that. And this is something not just true for security, but true for many technologies, many features that we see, from everyday handheld devices to other technologies. And I think it's just a basic human kind of or societal principle, or behavioral economics principle, where to shift certain technical adoption or to shift certain behaviors, we rely on incentives or penalties. And so it is essentially the same principle here.
Okay. Second question, how can CNI operators gain a social license to operate?
Okay, so I think the idea of social licensing here is important only in sectors such as railways, where first of all, the consumers, the users, they care about security in that sector. So the earlier comment in the previous talk, someone raised a question about how much do we know about what incidents are there. That's important to highlight, to raise awareness amongst railway passengers and users. And then the second follow-on point from that would be, once we have an awareness that security is an important issue and it matters, we then need to get the relevant operators to invest and show that they're investing, be transparent about it. And I think that would help with public acceptability. If that means that it comes at a cost of raised railway fares, at least as a user or a passenger, I feel that perhaps my investment is going in an area which I do care about.
Okay, thank you very much. Third question, are there already enough data on the percentage of companies' turnover reinvested in cybersecurity for CNI operators and not CNI operators? Yeah.
I don't know what that exactly what that means, but I think so one question. So okay, if I've understood the question correctly, so very quickly, in various market studies from various consulting houses, we know that in certain sectors or across sectors, organizations are spending more on security. However, what does that mean? And is it broken down enough for us to understand whether it is spent effectively? That's still an outstanding question. And that's only for individual organizations to answer. It's difficult to see sectoral data and be convinced that additional questioning or investment or expenditure is leading to effective security. There's no guarantee. We can throw money at it, but that's not a guarantee. So, in a sense, I don't know whether that question, in that sense, matters. But I think in terms of literally answering the question, there are different data sets. But yeah, there are sectoral level data sets that I am aware of. Okay, final question.
Final question. Sorry, yes. Studies from Elaine Renson show that product development with cybersecurity is not as expensive as expected. And they analyzed just a few projects. In our experience, we noticed that secure development lifecycle will in most of the cases reduce project costs, increase security, and also outcome predictability. Does that apply to CNI at their scale?
Yeah, so I think first of all, those studies, they should be promoted. We well, I mean, at least in the UK, but I know there are various other examples from various parts of the Western world where large IT projects are notorious for failing on costs and budget kind of profiles. So, and whether cybersecurity is, takes the blame for sometimes, I don't know, an unfair blame. I don't know, but maybe it does possibly. So if we have evidence of this, we should definitely highlight that. Does that apply to CNI? It's difficult to comment on this. One could argue, and I'll tell you why. One could argue that CNI projects get special treatment, or the budgets usually at scale are quite large. And also the efficiency gain, the economics is not always prioritized because it's CNI and it's meant seen to be critical. And usually the government's, given various subsidies or support, kind of brush away that topic. However, when it comes to operational CNI, we have seen remarkable failures where they have not invested in security. They have prioritized shareholder returns at the cost of financial health of the company. And of course, we can't afford that. So we can afford for a technology company to go bust, but the utility company here providing water, if they go bust, then that is a problem, and that's where unfortunately losses are nationalized, whereas profits are privatized, and we want to avoid that. So I think if we have evidence like this, I would encourage colleagues to promote that evidence, maybe share a copy with me as well. But also we need to then, of course, push this towards helping better business cases around security.
Thank you very much, Siraj. Okay, I think I'm going to hand to Lutz now.
Yeah, thank you, Nargis. Thank you, Zirai. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Marco, for these interesting introductions and presentations. Thank you all for your interesting questions. I will now try to raise your attention to our short feedback questionnaire on your evaluation of that webinar, and also for your suggestions for future ERCI webinars. The link is already in the chat. We will produce a video of this webinar as well. In a few days, we will upload it to our STARS webinars, STARS project YouTube platform, and then it could be seen for the rest of your life if you want. So some news from the ERCI network. The most important is that ERCI is present at the InnoTrans trade fair in 2 weeks. 10 of the 18 ERCI members are there with own booth or part of a joint booth in different areas of the fair. And one of the most important ERCI event is the ceremony of the ERCI Innovation Achievement Awards. And we have a new date, and it is Wednesday, the 25th of September from 9 o'clock. And the place remains the same. It's in Hall A, Syndic stand 240. And if you are at the Innotrans, you are warmly invited to participate. Yeah, we will have some other activities which are connected with the project led by ERCI, and Guido will give a short explanation in a few seconds. Is on the LEADER 2030 projects. There are 4 events taking place in that context. I will add the fourth event also to the slide, and then I will send you the updated information. There will be 2 LEADER 2030 talks, for instance, on the topics of additive manufacturing and on composites. And and what is the goal of the LEADER 2030 project? Guido will explain in a few seconds. We will have also a matchmaking opportunity, which is a virtual one, and mainly you could use them after the Innotrans to meet each other virtually. We have defined time slots from the 1st to the 3rd of October, but in general you could use this platform every time to meet with other interesting people. So the only one precondition is that you install your own profile on this platform, and these links which are in the slide show you how easy it is to have to install such a platform, to create such a platform. So I will shortly hand over to Guido to say something about the LEADER 2030 project and its progress. Guido, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lutz. Yes, I will say something about LEADER 2030. It's a European project managed by ERCI, and LEADER 2030 aims to have some learnings for European autonomy to deliver Europe's rail in 2030. So let's start from an example of Milton Friedman on the pencil. You see on the right-hand side how many composites are inside a pencil and where they are coming from the world. So you can imagine, next slide, how much it will be complicated to have a railway system. A railway system which is composed by infrastructure components, rolling stock, signaling, and so forth. So in this context, we have also to figure out that the world is evolving, and we have to consider geopolitical factors and climate changes. Everything is represented in this slide, is very small, but you can imagine that in the world, the railway sector is not the only one having some needs of raw material and electronic components and others. So the fact is that we are trying to see how the ERGU, Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking project, which are ongoing, will be able to deliver the product, the subsystem and the system in 2030. This is why we have established, we have won a call of ERGU, which is this project, and is led by ERCI. ERCI 18 clusters around Europe, which are near the territory. So it means that they are near the companies and the manufacturers who are supposed to manufacture all the elements of this rail system, the rail supply chain. It's covered by the cluster and the manufacturer and the members. In this project, in addition to ERCI, we have also Railenium, which is the technological center in France, specialized in railway. GKZ, which is the cluster of mining in Saxony, and Technopark Istanbul from Turkey, who will give us also some elements on the other sector needing exactly the same raw material and electronic components. So what have we done up to now? We have studied the past in order to know which are the disruptions that we have already faced in the previous years. And now we are analyzing the demand which are coming from all the flagship projects which are covered by contracts established under Europe's rail. Then we will analyze as a further step the supply side, which means the raw material value chain, in order to understand where the components and the raw materials are coming from, and which will be the way to cover the demand and the offer. Then, yes. This is what has been already done up to now on the Leader 2030. It's several outputs have been already delivered to Europe's rail about the lessons on disruption and some elements about supply alerts. Next slide. Thank you. So yes, next the next steps are some elements that will come out before the end of this month. And what is interesting is, again, they will be presented, and some key results will be presented during InnoTrans. So I invite you to come and hear what has been done and what we intend to do before the end of this project. Very interesting project, which affects a lot of us, maybe all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Guido. And as already mentioned, there will be 4 events related to the Leader 2030 project during the InnoTrans. I will send you with a presentation the 4 events, and also can be found for sure at the project website of Leader 2030. The link is already in the chat. So some short words on another project that is already finished, but it could be still used to find some suitable contacts in USA, Canada, and Norway when you are planning as a small medium-sized enterprise in successfully applying to public procurements in these countries. There are some contact persons in 3 different ERCI clusters. We have DTEC Fair, we have eTools, and we have Mafex responsible for the USA, Canada, and Norway market. And you can find detailed information on this project on the project website as well, which you can find in the chat. So last slide, it is the announcement of the next ERCI webinar. It will be in 5 weeks. On the 16th of October. It is, as always, a Wednesday, and it is on railway and AI together for efficient and smart mobility. And the registration link is already available. And for sure, I will send you the information with a follow-up email, also with the presentation and the video, which we have to cut and have to produce and have to upload it to the website, to the STARS YouTube channel platform. And then when all information are available, you will receive a follow-up email, also with the invitation to the next ERCI webinar for sure. So I would remind you to use the short feedback questionnaire for your for your evaluation, for your suggestions for future ERCI webinar topics, and I have to thank you all for your attention, for your question, and for your patience. And have a good day and see you soon. Bye-bye.